Hello and welcome to another RE7 talk. Today with Akos from Hungary. Welcome
Welcome.
to our podcast. I'm really happy to have you here today. And today we are going to talk about your entrepreneurship, your journey from like entrepreneur to creating your own agency in Hungary. Happy to have you here. Hello, Akos.
Thanks a lot for having me here.
Before we start, can you give us a short introduction, who you are and what are you doing?
Sure. Shall I start from the early points when I started entrepreneurship, or shall I start with Markastic and what I'm doing now?
Let's start what you're doing now, and then we explore a bit how everything, how you came to where you are now.
Okay, sure. So I'm Ákos Fodor. I'm leading a company called Markastic, sort of a combination of Majestic, Fantastic, and marketing. So this is a digital marketing agency, mostly focusing on three things. One is measurement, analytics, data, Google tag management, configuration, and so on and so forth. The other part is paid media, anything which relates to PPC, could be paid social, Google, TikTok, whatever. And also the last part is SEO, so search engine optimization. We are 16 people in-house, and some externals also support us on project basis. We are based in Budapest. The headquarters is here, but we also focus on international fields, and we have many clients from the EU mostly. Our pure focus is e-commerce and online lead generation. So this is a performance marketing agency focusing on digital marketing activities.
Sounds almost like our agency a bit.
Could be yours.
but in Romania, and you guys are a bit bigger with 16 people like ours. So how old are you?
That's a good question. 37. I just turned 37
37.
2 weeks ago.
37. So one year younger than I am. I see. Before you started your, how old is Markastic?
This is the 6th year. Yeah. So we
6
started
years.
at the end of 2018, but at the very last part of, I think that was December. So the first whole year was 2019.
I see. And then I would say let's go a bit back when you finished. I guess you studied, or what did you do?
Yeah. I studied business administration first and foremost in Budapest, and later on I moved to the Netherlands, and I studied strategic entrepreneurship in Rotterdam at the Rotterdam School of Management. So mostly I studied always something pretty generic, and at a later stage I wanted to define myself a bit better. So when someone is, let's say, a financial specialist or someone good at logistics, it's pretty much defined. In my case, it was management. It's pretty untangible, also like undefined. So unfortunately, I didn't have like a specific sort of like cap that I can wear. So at a certain point, I started to focus more on marketing. I learned a lot from that, from online courses, and I started my first Google Ads campaign in 2011, so almost 14 years ago.
Wow. And just to understand, I mean, what made you want to study? By the way, I also studied business administration, funny enough. So what made you study business administration, and why did you want to go to study in Amsterdam?
Actually, that was Rotterdam, but
Rotterdam, sorry, yes.
doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So I wanted to study something pretty generic because I didn't know exactly what field interested me the most. So I did not have like a specific interest for finance or accounting or marketing or coding or whatever. So I was pretty generic. And to be honest, I wanted to be a psychologist. But ever since my mother is a psychiatrist, my brother is also a psychologist, my cousin is a
Wow.
psychologist, and so on and so forth, I wanted to simply close that route and not following all the others. So I said, okay, let's be something more generic. And that's how I ended up being someone at business administration field. Super generic and not psychology.
Wow. How is it living in a family with so many
Yeah.
psychologists? I guess it's quite challenging.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, sounds interesting. And why did you decide to study in Rotterdam and not at home in your own country?
That's a good question. Before moving to the Netherlands, I participated in 2 different companies as a co-founder, but
Mm-hmm.
none of them actually turned out to be a big success. It was sort of like a side business besides my main job, but I expected a lot. For instance, the first company was focusing on tourism, and we had a pretty simple challenge. Let's kick
Mm-hmm.
the ass of TripAdvisor and be better than them. It's not easy, I can tell.
I can imagine, but interesting. I think also Booking. I think Booking started also in the Netherlands, if I'm correct. I'm not
Could be, could
100% sure.
be,
Yeah.
could be. They have a big headquarter over there, but mainly we had super challenging ideas, and also we were super ambitious, but we did not have any experience whatsoever, no fundings. So when I decided to move to the Netherlands, I wanted to change my life completely and sort of like
Mm-hmm.
restart. And I think if you reposition a bit, that also helps to be like emotionally disconnected from your former failures or like dead ends you ran
Mm-hmm.
into. So I wanted to move to somewhere else and have a bit more inspiration. And the Rotterdam School of Management had back that time the best entrepreneurship education in Europe. It's not Stanford
Yeah.
yet, but let's call it Stanford in Europe.
Interesting. It sounds really interesting. And um, so when did you start the first company?
That was already in 2011. So after I graduated from business administration in Budapest, we
Mm-hmm.
participated in a competition, like an entrepreneurial competition. We got a little bit of funding, so like a ridiculously small amount of money, but back then it
Yeah.
seemed to be huge. So we said, okay, we
Mm-hmm.
are ambitious, hardworking, we have a bit of funding, we have a good idea which is somehow related to tourism and also pretty much similar to TripAdvisor, and we were sure we can beat them. we couldn't
Understood. Understood.
we
And how
couldn't do it.
many people were there in the company?
2 co-founders and 2 developers. We actually funded the developers and paid for them, and we split the company 50-50 with a good friend of mine. It wasn't like a
Under
full-time job for us, sort of like a side business,
side hustle. Yeah.
but it
Mhm.
didn't turn out to be the next TripAdvisor or Booking.com or whatever.
Understood. But still, I mean, that was also the year in 2011 when you said you started your first Google campaign. I guess that was for this specific company.
Sort of, because typically that was a missing piece of most of the business like ideas or like ventures. No one actually understood with the background of business administration how marketing works. So someone had to
Mhm.
deep dive into that topic. So I said, I'm going to be that one. So that's how I picked up digital marketing.
And you did this as a side hustle, you said. So parallel, you started already to study something new, or what did you do parallel?
Now, like for living, I did tour guiding back in Budapest. So that was one job of mine. And I also worked
Mhm.
for some other companies as employee, um, but not in a full-time position, but typically, let's say 3 days per week. And besides that
Mhm.
one, I did a bit of tour guiding, which I started back at the university ages. And in the meantime, I also tried to uh, do some venture on my own.
And I understood the company that you started, was it in Rotterdam or was it in
It
Budapest?
was still in Budapest.
Ah, it was in Budapest. Okay, so you studied, finished studying, came back, and then you said, okay, let's start the company.
The way it started, so I finished the university in Budapest, then I started this
Mhm.
venture, and I participated in another one at a bit later stage, and then
Mhm.
afterwards I moved to the Netherlands. That was 2014 when I moved
Yeah,
to the Netherlands.
nice. And how long? I mean, you said you had like this project, you did some tour guiding and so on. So how long was this phase and what happened after that? I mean, when was the next
Yeah,
step?
so I think the big move was the Netherlands. So actually, between 2011 until 2014, I was in Budapest. I was working in Budapest, and I also participated in two different ventures. One was this touristic company. The other one was a family business. My mother, my brother, me, myself, we started a human resource development software. So that was also a startup with lots of ambitions, and that company actually kept living. And my mother is running that show still
Wow,
today.
nice.
But I quit that company mostly because of like family issues, family conflicts. It's not good to be the boss of your mother. So I quit the company.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
to work with your family.
Yeah, and I think the next stage was the Netherlands. So I moved to the Netherlands in 2014. At a later stage, I moved to Berlin in Germany in order to join a company as an employee, and that was Rocket Internet. And I worked for one of their ventures in Berlin. And later on, I also moved to Santiago de Chile with a business scholarship and lived there for a while. And I got back to Budapest and started to work for a company in 2016. So I think 1.5 years later.
Wow. So your entrepreneurship, you went from Hungary, Netherlands, then you stopped by in Berlin at one of the biggest startup at this time, Rocket Internet. And then you went to Chile, which is South America.
It
So
is.
what did you do in South America? You worked there or you
We moved there with my brother because we applied for a local scholarship that's called Startup Chile, which is a non-equity accelerator. So the way it works, the Chilean government supports your business idea, especially something which helps humankind in any way. So we framed our business idea that human resource development software and applied for that scholarship. We got that. So my brother moved over there, and later on, I also moved over there, and my mother worked for that from home from Hungary. So actually, only the two of us, my brother and I, moved to Santiago de Chile for half a year.
Wow.
7 months all in all, but for me, it was half a year.
And after that, or did you start like another business then in Chile because you said it's like an accelerator, or was just a scholarship, as you said?
That was the scholarship. We focused on the exact same business idea we had already before in Budapest. So we just evolved that one. And when I moved back, I still felt I do not have my own path. So I completely finished that sort of like business relationship with my brother and my mother, and I joined a company which is similar to Booking.com called Szállás.ag, which is actually like accommodation aggregator website. And I was responsible for all the digital marketing activities in Poland, but from Budapest. So actually, the company was expanding to many Central Eastern European markets, Romania, Poland, also Czech Republic, and so on and so forth. And I was responsible for all the digital marketing activities in Poland, but the headquarters was in Budapest. So that was 2016.
So that was your first, I mean, you said already before you were dragged to marketing, but that was your first full-time job in digital marketing.
The second one, because at Rocket Internet in Berlin, that
right,
was also
yes,
a
you did
digital
also.
marketing.
That was a specific area, or it was all sorts of marketing?
That was marketing. I was responsible for two things in Berlin. One was Facebook ads, and the other one was email marketing.
Wow. Pretty cool. So then you did after Rocket Internet, Santiago de Chile, and then you started at this other company for digital marketing. So how long did you work there, and what happened after?
Okay, we are getting pretty close to Markastic. So
Okay.
that was 2016. And what happened at the end of 2016, I wanted to have a bit more independence, mostly like time independence. So I requested that from the company to change somehow my position. So instead of being like a full-time employee, I happened to become a contractor. But I did the exact same job as before for quite a while. And in the meantime, I started to freelance a bit. So the whole story in 2017 went as follows. I had sort of like a full-time position at that company, but as a contractor and not as a full-time employee. And in the meantime, I started to work on some freelancing projects, not too many, but some. And at the end of 2017, early 2018, I realized that I'm at the decision point either to get stuck with that setup, to have like one large client and also some smaller companies for whom I'm freelancing, or let's start involving some other people and start a company around that digital marketing service. So at the end of 2018, Markastic came alive. And ever since, I'm leading that company. So almost 6 years, like 5.5 years so far.
Yeah. And when did you hire your first employee? Was this already in 2018 directly, or?
No, the company in this format started at the end of 2018, and the first hire was 2019, but already in January.
And how did this go? I mean, now
That
that you
first
had
hire,
like you had probably much more responsibilities because you were the CEO and so on. So how did this go for you?
you mean the first hire, or generally speaking, the
No,
whole
in
evolution?
general, I mean, now you had a different position. First, you were like hired as contractor or as marketing specialist, and now you were kind of like, I mean, you were the CEO, so you had other responsibilities: hire
Sure.
people, lead people, manage people, decide on a strategy, doing
Yeah.
sales. I mean, much more things came on your
Yeah.
plate, I guess.
Yes. I think like we do have, I don't have that puppet at hand, unfortunately, but we do have a puppet, sort of like a mascot for the company, which is a
Okay.
chameleon combined with a robot. It's called the
Okay.
Roboleon. The Roboleon is actually representing two things. One is the adaptiveness of a chameleon. It can be black, it can be white, it can be yellow, it can be red. So it's always adapting to the circumstances. And it also looks like a robot, because you have to be pretty like structured, especially in digital marketing, when you focus on data optimization, numbers, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So actually, that Roboleon represents also the adaptive like attitude you should have as a CEO. So whenever there's a new challenge, and obviously as you grow, new challenges are coming by. So it wasn't easy, and obviously I have some good skills in some fields, and I'm lacking some others at other fields. So what I learned along that way, you must be super adaptive, always open to learn something new or involve someone who learn more than you, because like you may be good at sales, but you're not good in marketing. Maybe you're good in marketing, but not good in numbers and financials. Maybe you're good in motivating people, but bad in hiring them. So I had to learn everything from scratch. And even though you learned management, what does that mean? Like, you are a manager then if you graduate from the university? It doesn't necessarily mean that they educate you how you can hire somebody or how you can motivate somebody.
Makes total sense. Yes, I fully agree with you. And you prepared a bit for our podcast today.
I did my
So
best.
now that we heard your entrepreneurial journey, you created some. I will share it right now. You
Sure.
created some main takeaways that you got. In total, there are 19.
Yeah.
And I would say we can just dive in and you can speak about them. I can ask you questions in order for our watchers and listeners to understand what are they about. We will also share them in our show notes
Sure.
so that people can read them after that. And I would say let's just go through them and you can explain what you meant with them.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing that. So I'm not telling you that these 19 points will save the life of all the wannabe entrepreneurs, but maybe it's useful for some of them. So I just want to
Yeah.
share from my personal perspective. So what I learned when I started my first venture is that, and I think the first two things relate to that one, the first 2 points. I think it's better to start learning somewhere else first. So when you don't risk that much, and you can learn from other experts or other entrepreneurs, see how they navigate the company, how they motivate people, how they fail.
Hmm.
So it's also not only like positive things, it could be like a failure. So
Yeah.
anything that you can learn from them will help you a lot when you start your own company. So I would recommend to start at the place where you can learn the most. So it's not about the money, because you can obviously earn some, but I think if the learning curve is super steep, then you are at the right place. So for me, Rocket Internet was a game changer. So I didn't work there for quite a long time, but the mentality, the structured way of forming a business, how pushy they can be, how eager the people are to work even overnight if they want to achieve something. It
Mm.
sort of like sets the standards for me. So I think where you can learn the most is the best place to be before starting a company. And the second point relates to startups. So I don't know whether the listeners or the watchers of this podcast read the book called The Lean Startup from Eric Ries. But Eric
Hmm.
Ries defines startups as human institutions, sort of like living or like acting within super extreme and unknown, undefined circumstances. So actually, when you start something completely new, you cannot be sure whether that's going to be a success or a failure. And 99% of the cases, that's a failure. So no matter what, when you start a super sexy, innovative, groundbreaking company, that's a good direction to go. But you should be aware of the fact 99% of the cases you will fail, no matter what numbers are against you, I would say. So I would recommend to all the wannabe entrepreneurs to start something which is a lifestyle business. And the way I define lifestyle business is pretty simple: something which got already tested by something else or someone else. So for instance, digital marketing agency. I know it works because there are thousands of digital marketing agencies out there. So only thing that can happen, you are mediocre, or maybe you are outperforming them, or maybe you're underperforming them, but you are sure that the business model is tested, validated, and you don't risk that much. So start with something which is a lifestyle business, because you can already learn a lot from that: the business structure, motivating people, hiring people, managing cash flow, having some loans or whatever. And you don't have to learn it from a super I would
Hmm.
say unstable company, which is a startup. So these are the first 2 points I would recommend.
Nice. And you mentioned Rocket Internet. I mean, Rocket Internet, I know they are copied some business models. So was this also like a lifestyle business, what they did in
Oh,
a
that's
sense?
a good
Or
question. I never thought of that one, but yes, Rocket Internet is typically starting different copycats of successful American businesses. And what they do, they either sell that business to the main player, the main giant from the US, or they try to somehow gain traction here in Europe, and later on, probably there will be an exit or an IPO or whatever. They started Food Panda, for instance, or Zalando, some other large players. They also have Vimdu, which is the exact replica of Airbnb. So they have many, many businesses, but obviously they did that extremely well with super cool experts on many fields.
and I remember the Samba brothers are behind it. So were you directly under the Samba brothers, or you were in one of the ventures working?
I was like, the way it worked. I worked for a specific venture called
Hmm.
Nestpick, which is a long-term rental aggregator platform. I would call it that way. So
Hmm.
when Airbnb is focusing on short-term rentals, this one particularly focused on long-term rentals. Let's say students relocating to one place to another, and then they need an apartment for a longer period of time. And typically in a regular week, I worked 3 days at the venture and 2 days at the head office of Rocket Internet. They were pretty close to each other, like walking distance. And I worked for that particular venture, and also spent some time in the headquarters whenever I needed some support for that particular venture. And it didn't. I met obviously the founders of Rocket Internet many times, but I did not have like direct connection with them.
Yeah, but as far as I know, and you mentioned this already, sleepless nights, working during the night. I mean, as I also heard, I mean, I listened to some podcasts about Rocket Internet and the story of the Samwer brothers. I know they were kind of like ruthless and they were really like expecting a lot. So, how was it for you working at Rocket Internet at the time? Because I know, I mean, it was like this time when there was lots of going on in the internet and startups were like really growing fast. So how was it for you? I know you didn't work so long there, but what was the feeling for you working in such an agile company?
I loved it. So seriously, I had the chance to work with German people, Dutch people, French people, Italians, and so on and so forth. I could learn a lot from different personalities, different like cultures, how nations actually vary from each other. And also the structuredness of Rocket Internet is unbelievable. So imagine a venture builder where in the head office, actually 600, 700 people, like different experts set. I don't know how many people are there as of now, but back then you had 600, 700 super cool experts on specific niche fields you could turn to and learn a lot from them. Just one particular example. I did my best to write a function in Google Sheet. Somehow it always failed. I spent 2-3 hours on that. And then I requested some support from an expert in the headquarters. The only question he had was, okay, you want to have it in Excel or Google Sheet? And I said, in Google Sheet, please. In, I think, like 40 seconds, the whole function was completely configured and fixed. There was only one simple mistake. I got that feedback, and then instantly he fixed it. So in 2 minutes, the whole issue was solved. The whole function that guy had was to actually code different functions in Excel and Google Sheet. That was his role.
Like just like a firefighter. So they had firefighters for specific complex task, and then they would jump in, fix this for you, and you could continue what you were working on.
And there's the economies of scale if you have, let's say, 70, 80 different ventures at the same time. So at that size, you can have experts on every field because they can support back and forth between different ventures.
Wow. Sounds really innovative. I mean, when you have this size, I mean, it's like pretty cool to have this possible. So going through the third point, choose a business where the revenue stream is recurring and not project or hourly basis.
Yeah. Digital marketing agency is also a good example for that one. So as of now, 97% of our revenue is coming from revenue, which is recurring. So we have like a flat fee or like a retainer fee on a monthly basis. And you can easily calculate with that one. You don't have to worry about the cash flow that much. Obviously, it may happen that all of the contracts get terminated tomorrow, but I don't think that's a realistic scenario for tomorrow. So if you have recurring revenue sources, that's always better to calculate the business going forward, calculate with the different costs, cover the new hires, and so on and so forth. So I would recommend to start something. If someone is like a wannabe entrepreneur, start something where the revenue source will be recurring and not a project basis one.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also easier to plan if you have recurring revenue and not project based. I mean, it's hard to plan with your cash flow that is in your bank account and to plan also with new hires and so on.
Yeah.
So this recurring is like the golden grail to have it. And for example, also the big players, Microsoft, Amazon, and so on, they all try to implement this as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, when Microsoft switched from the Office product in the cloud, they wanted something recurring because if you have recurring revenue, your shareholders love this because they know, hey, they make always this turnover. It doesn't go just away. Or when Amazon introduced Amazon Prime, and now I even saw Wizz Air is also Hungarian, or isn't it? Now Wizz Air introduced, like, which is like a really cool marketing stunt from my point of view. They introduced flat rate for flying. So you pay a fixed amount of money every month and you get your flight always for the same price, of course, for a specific place where you're leaving. And this is like a game changer from my point of view, because now this airline introduced recurring revenue, which is the best that you can have when you have like an airline. And I know the minimum, how is it called? The minimum contract period is 12 months. I don't know what happens when another COVID strikes and so on, or something else strikes. But I mean, they have a recurring revenue. As I understood, you pay in advance this money. So even if something comes, they have the money, they can work with this, which is, from my point of view, genius.
It is. I made some calculations as well, because I also got that promotional email. And if you fly somewhere above like 22 times per year, it's already worth the investment. But below that amount, if you're not a frequent flyer, probably you can have better like final cost if you buy the tickets one by one.
I mean, you need also your destinations that they are covered by Wizz Air, but I think it's quite easy because you need just to book, I think it was 1 week in advance or something, or 2 weeks, and then you can fly. I mean, you can be really flexible with this tariff. On the other side, if you always have to check for special offers, it's like a lot of hassle.
By the way, BMW also introduced some recurring revenue sources. So for some extra functionalities within your car, you have to pay a subscription fee.
I have heard of this, yes, but I mean, there are lots of people were like a bit annoyed of this, that you have like features that you can switch on or off, which is kind of like a ripoff. I mean, I can understand the automotive industry, but they need to come up with something smarter from my point of view. They cannot just say, hey, the seat heating, you just book when you need it, and that's it. It's But let's see how this goes. Your fourth rule, money must flow, or your main takeaway. Money must flow. Besides setting the future directions, that's the most important role of a CEO.
Yes. So I think that combines with the point number 5. So I know it's not easy, because you're a dreamer, you're a visionary, you have something big in the future. But if there's no money in the bank account, you cannot pay your colleagues, you cannot invest into something new. So even though that's always a bit disappointing to focus on numbers and the money itself, I think the CEO must take care of the cash flow and also the sales. And there's one particular sentence I love the most from Guy Kawasaki: sales fixes everything. So if you can do the sales, or someone from your team can do the sales, money will come in, and you can figure it out afterwards how you can actually deliver that value you promise. But someone must do the sales, otherwise there's no money in. And without money, you cannot dream. So it shouldn't be the opposite way around, that you dream something big and you realize there's no money in the bank account, but the opposite way around. If you can finance your future plans or big visions, I think it's a far better direction to go. So take care of the financials first.
That's a great takeaway, and I can fully underline this. I mean, if you are good in sales, that's half of the thing when you setting up a company. When you know how to sell things, then that's half of the way. I mean, most important is then to have a proper contract. So when you sold something, that they have to bind to the contract so that you get your money. But if you know how to sell, this is the most important part. And you will never be poor or need to ask for some money, because if you know how to sell, then you will always have money and the money will flow.
Yeah. Number 6 and number 7. So I think, and
Five,
correctly,
5 and 6. We were. You wrote. We had already. Sales is fixes everything. Be
yeah,
good at sales. I have someone on board with such skills. That
yeah,
was 5
yeah,
exactly, and now 6 and 7.
yeah.
Just
So
just for our listeners, I'm reading them so that they also know what we're talking
yeah,
about.
sure. Sorry.
Um, make some personal sacrifice when needed. For example, living in the office. And 7, we will come to this.
Yeah, I'll
Run
do
the
so.
extra mile. For example, extra working hours, 60, 70 hours per week. The maximum I logged was 108 hours in a week. That's insane. Okay, tell me about it. So make some personal sacrifice when needed.
Yeah. So number 6. Just a funny story. At the early stage of Markastic, I did not have that much money. We didn't have an office either, and I was renting an apartment in Budapest. So I wanted to
Mhm.
combine all of my resources to start the company. So I decided to ask for a bank loan, which I did, and I actually bought a 91 square meter sized apartment and changed it to an office place for Markastic, which was back then the dream of one guy, and we didn't have any employees whatsoever. And I decided to save some money on that, so I moved into the smallest room of that office, actually
Yeah.
5 square meters all in all.
Wow. Oh my
And I
God.
lived there for almost 7 months until I decided that the company is already financially stable enough to move somewhere else. And then I rented an apartment pretty close by to the office. But for 7 months in a row, some of the colleagues were in an office where I also lived full time.
Let me tell you a secret. For RE7, Romania was the same.
Cool.
um, but I didn't buy an apartment. I rented an apartment, and we started from the kitchen. And I still have photos of this. And then we moved to the living room, and I mean, it was great because I was able to work directly. We had a kitchen and things like this, and
It's super
I
practical.
mean,
It's super practical.
yes, and also what you have to keep in mind, I mean, when you start a business and you don't use some venture capital, you use your own money, um, the costs that you can avoid, you try to avoid because, I mean, you want to first be profitable. And the first way to do this is to invest only what is needed. So that means like you pay your employees, you pay the equipment. But for the office, I mean, if you have the possibility to combine both of it, I mean, that might be a start for a period of time. And then when you are profitable, as you said, then you can move to something else, like to a normal office without like a bed. But sometimes I guess you wish to have like something where you can sleep, because when I look at the next point, run the extra mile, work extra hours. I mean, 108 hours in a week sounds like you didn't have sleep at all for me.
Yeah, but if you live in the office, you never get late. So you're instantly in the office. So yeah, that was the maximum I logged at Markastic. We use time tracking, and that was the maximum I worked in a week. I know it's a
Like
massive
7
amount of,
days, you mean, yeah?
yeah, in 7 days. Yeah, in 7 days.
So I
Um,
just calculated it's 15 hours,
Roughly
15,
15 hours
almost
per
15 and
day.
a half.
Yeah,
Oh
but
my
I'm
God.
not telling you or recommend it to anyone to work always that amount. But if you start a company, and it may happen that, let's say, COVID hits, or there's a war next to your borders or whatever. So there are lots of things like external factors you have to cope with.
Mhm.
And in that case, you must roll up your sleeves, and maybe there's like endless days, endless working hours, because you must fix something. That's actually the destiny or the future of your company. So if you don't fix it, and that was COVID, for instance, we lost 11 clients in one day, which is a lot, especially if you are only a 2-year long company.
Wow.
You must do something about that one. And oftentimes I worked many extra hours, and I still do. But in the meantime, you obviously have a bit more independence, because you may say, hey, tomorrow I'll be off because I want to stretch out a bit. So be
Yeah.
prepared for that. If you're an entrepreneur, it's not going to be a 40-hour work week always.
Yes, I can totally agree with you on this topic. So everybody that wants to do go on an entrepreneurship journey, roll up your sleeves. I mean, you will be the worker in the room that will work the hardest and the longest. Um, but at the end, you know what it is worth for, from my point of view.
Yes.
And if you have a vision, I mean, and you are motivated, I mean, you like what you're doing. I mean, if you're looking back, for me it was like this when I worked like a lot and so on. It was like kind of like a journey, and I really look back to it. But as you said, I mean, working every week so many hours, like 108, is not healthy. We can all
Yeah,
agree
it's
on
not.
this, but sometimes you need to go the extra mile, as you say. I can totally agree with you on this takeaway. Um, Number 8, grow and grow up with your company emotionally and personally.
Yeah, so it means to me that as the company goes and company grows, hopefully, new and new
Mhm.
challenges will come in. I think the big game changer when you have mid managers or like a management level team who manage other people on behalf of the company. So that's already a game changer when you do not have direct control and direct connection with all of the colleagues. And it's not
Mhm.
easy to do so because you must change your control freak attitude, or you must become a bit less perfectionist, or you must accept the fact that you motivate people who motivate other people and they all make mistakes along the way. So I think what I made as a mistake is that I sort of like pre-assumed that as the company grows, I will grow sort of like organically, but that's not the case. So I took lots of like coaching hours. I'm also taking a coaching course as of now to learn how to be a better leader. I read lots of books. I also participated in many masterminds in order to learn from other people what failures they had
Mhm.
and what successes they had. So I think if someone believes that instantly you are a good manager if you can manage, let's say, 5 people, and you will be able to do the same for like 50 people, that's not the case. Completely different personality and like characteristics are needed for the different scenarios. And what I missed at the beginning, I did not train myself, or I did not ask for support to be trained at that certain field. I'm catching up now, but I forgot to be like emotionally and personally prepared for like a larger stage.
Yeah, I mean, you have these stages where you're going like the first employees, and then boom, you are 10 employees. Now you're at 16, and it feels like, I guess, you're hitting also a wall somehow. It
Yeah.
doesn't, you can't push. So you need to change something in the company, but also on yourself. And I can fully relate to this. A lot of reading, a lot of learning, coaching in order to understand what's going on. And there are also, like you meant here, emotionally and personally, there are also some fears or other things are holding you back. For example, for me, it was always you need to work hard to earn money. This is like a belief that I
Mhm.
had for a really long time, and I had to go over it in order to learn, no, you don't have to work hard. You need to work smart.
Yeah.
Um, and this is like every entrepreneur has these kind of beliefs that they have to work through them in order to grow personally, but also grow their company.
Yeah, it often happens, and I got that feedback from many agency consultants that oftentimes around the size of like 12 to 15 people, agencies start to actually stagnate simply
Yeah.
because they got to a like a certain wall, as you framed it, uh, and they cannot actually break it through. And it may happen that this is simply because of like industrial circumstances. Maybe digital marketing is over and there's no additional like incoming requests from customers. It could be the case, but oftentimes I think that stagnating point comes because of an organizational issue or or dead end, and that can actually relate to your personal skills as the CEO. So we are stagnating for a while. And I think it's not because of the industrial circumstances, but simply because as an organization, we couldn't evolve as quickly as we wanted.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you fully on that. Point number 9, know yourself and your entrepreneurial personality type. Be it the entrepreneur, the manager, or the technician, from Michael Gerber.
Yes. So there's a book called E-Myth, which I highly recommend to all the listeners, actually written by Michael Gerber. And he came up with the personality types of entrepreneurs in a way that there's one who's called entrepreneur. He's the visionary. He's like a serial entrepreneur starting something again and again, something new. So always scouting around for new opportunities. The manager is rather someone who's coordinating things, building up structures, but not someone who's purely entrepreneurial and building always something new. That's a super important role within an organization, but not necessarily someone who starts many businesses along the way. And the technician is typically someone who's an expert on one particular field and decides to actually change that expertise into a business. That was my case as well. So I was a good digital marketer, and I said, hey, let's start a digital marketing agency out of that expertise. But if you start a company as a technician, you should be aware of all the limitations which comes with that sort of like personality type and also like the expertise you have. So for instance, if you know the deliverables in and out, you're an expert of digital marketing, you will be a control freak. I was a senior digital marketer, and I was always into all of the projects because I wanted to make sure this is perfectly delivered. If you're a technician, that fallacy often happens to you. So if you start a company along your expert field, you should be aware of the moment you should change from a technician to an entrepreneur or to a manager. Otherwise, the company will stagnate because you cannot control everything, and people will be completely pissed off and over, sort of like whelmed with you, simply with your technical skills.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I see myself when I started, in general, I have like a traineeship. In German, it's called Ausbildung. It's 3 years in the technic field, like IT. And then I moved quickly, like I mean, I stayed then in data privacy, IT security, and then I went to marketing, but more like from a manager role already. I studied their business administration, so I was mainly responsible for HR and for finances. So when I started RE7 in Romania, for example, I was mainly being the manager and not involved like you are in every client, which helped me to work at the company, not with the clients. So I still have time to work on the company, not directly with the clients, and have also a different perspective how we work with clients in order to see things that maybe somebody that works directly with the client can't see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
fully
I
agree.
fully get this takeaway. Then let's move to number 10.
Yeah. So numbers might be a
Choose,
bit, a bit tricky because it restarts from 1. But anyway, that's number 10.
yeah, choose and test your future business partners, co-founders wisely, but ideally start on your own and keep the majority of the ownership. A 50-50 split can make the company get stuck.
Yeah. So I think oftentimes people start companies together not only because they complement each other on certain skills. Let's say I'm a good marketer and I have a friend who's a developer. Let's code something new and be the next TripAdvisor. But simply because they do not have the fundings. So they want to team up with other people who can deliver something for sweat equity and be
Yeah.
unpaid and get equity for the sake of starting the company, or they need external motivation and accountability to start something because they wouldn't do that on their own. But what actually happens in that case, you may have, let's say, 3 co-founders, you all own 25% of the company. What if someone quits? Or what if there are only 2 co-founders and you're at the decision point and you have one vote on one direction and your partner has another vote on another direction? Who wins with that one? Oftentimes it gets stuck. So I would highly recommend, if it's possible, and this is not something which is mandatory to start something with someone else, start the company on your own, rather finance and like fund the additional like support or like coding or whatever we are needed for the success. Like finance it on your own in the beginning. And obviously, if you want to offer ownership from the company because you can involve someone who's super valuable for the company, do so. I'm not against like partnerships, but it can slow down your company and the decision making a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. I had the same in other companies in RE7 Germany, where we had 50-50, which also slowed down the progress of the company because, I mean, every person has different values, but also different ideas how they see the company. So that might get then, I mean, they collide to each other sometimes with some decisions, and that gets some frustration and it slows down the company. And also, I mean, if you want to be strong and give your employees a vision, there should be one vision so that they can see, okay, everybody goes after this vision that the CEO gave out. So it's always hard if you have several people like involved in this. I mean, they can work together, but at the end, they need to be a unit goal that they have, and not that one says, "Yeah, we're going this way," and the other says, "We're going this way." As you said, that slows down the company. Also, has an effect on your employees that they are confused, and which is not good. And that's why I fully agree. Have one that is the leader, CEO, has the majority shares, because this person takes also full responsibility, you know. And if you found somebody like co-founder, like I found, for example, Alexandra, you can give her some shares, but keep the main shares at you. Because I mean, you started the baby, you have a vision, and it's also like easier for you to steer the boat. For example, if COVID hits or other things hit, like you said, with 11 clients were leaving on one day, you need like somebody that can lead the team. Yeah, can fully relate to this. So that was number 10.
And I guess, yes.
And now we go to number 11. If you are a solo entrepreneur, join an accountability group. Okay, you have already a solution for the ones that shouldn't
So if
co-found.
you are a solo entrepreneur, let's say 100% owner, or let's say 90%, and there are like minor co-founders with minority ownership. The issue is that no one is leading you. There is no sort of like accountability around you. Obviously, you can be self-motivated. You can make promises to yourself, to your team members, colleagues, customers, whoever. But at the end of the day, no one says, "Hey, you are fired," or no one says, "Hey, your performance evaluation is bad," because you're at the top. It doesn't mean that you should be like an aggressive, autocratic leader, but you should be aware of the fact no one is guiding you, no one is controlling you. And an accountability group can be a solution to that one. So I also joined some accountability groups with others, sometimes solo entrepreneurs or like co-founders who also led different digital agencies. And that was a super big like social pressure and motivation to me to actually make a promise to someone else, and sort of as an external authority, it all pushed me to a direction to submit and finish whatever I promised to them. So I think if you need a bit of like social pressure as a solo entrepreneur, an accountability group is super valuable source for that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I know how it is sometimes, and it also motivates you. And especially when you don't have like somebody close to you that is also an entrepreneur and you want to discuss some certain things and you need a different opinion of someone, this accountability group is also like some help to give you some ideas, advices, especially when it's like even like other agency owners that might have the same issue or experience the same issue, which can help.
Yes, exactly.
Number 12, fake it till you make it. Free to type it. Alberto Savoia.
Yeah, he's an ex-Googler as far as I know, and maybe he was also participating in the development of Google Ads. And at a later stage, he wrote a book called Prototype It, which is even further down the line as a prototype. So you don't have to create something which is already like a functioning solution, like an MVP, like a minimum viable product, but you can fake it even if you don't have it. So let's imagine that we do not offer any AI related services now, but I can have sort of like a landing page on that. Hey, we have AI solutions for e-commerce companies. I can start the marketing campaign around that one. If someone signs up for that service, I can start building that service because I already have a bit of traction around that one. I don't have to look around what AI solution for e-commerce companies is, but I can fake it till you make it. So I think it all starts with marketing and sales. And if you can have it already as an incoming demand, then you can make it. Obviously, that's a moment of truth, whether you can live up to your promises and exceed that. But typically, you can do that if you are a hardworking and smart person. So I would highly recommend to all people, before you build something and work on that in your garage for like many, many months or even years, go to the market, test it first, and if there's market traction for that, then build a solution around that one. The worst case scenario that may happen, you have to refuse that request and simply say, hey, unfortunately, we cannot deliver, and then you don't contract for that.
Nice one. And yeah, with the AI, really good idea. And then you can also figure out what the client wants, because there are so many things that you can do with AI. So first you need to know what does the client exactly want regarding AI. You can double check, can you do this? And then, as you said, if you can't make it happen, worst case, you decline. You don't have to say, I don't know how. You can also say, hey, I have enough going on currently, you know?
Yeah.
So really, really nice takeaway. Number 13, controlling system in place. Numbers hurt a lot, but they don't lie.
Yep. So I think in the first 3 years of Markastic, we were running the show and flying with the show without knowing exactly what's going on, how the numbers look, whether we are profitable or not. Obviously, we had more cash in the bank, and that was a good feeling. But on project basis or client basis or activity basis, we had no clue what's going on. And ever since, we have a controlling system, even though that's not 100% precise, because there's always some sort of administration mistake behind. But at least we have a 95% crystal clear view of the company, and it hurts. So when you get that information that one of the client is generating huge loss for you, and you have to terminate that contract, or you have to try to renegotiate that one, or you have to tell your let's say employees, hey, you cannot spend more than 10 hours on that exact customer because otherwise it's loss making. That's hard feeling. Like, it's better to say, hey, enjoy the show, but it could mean that financially you are on the wrong track. And at a certain size, when you are responsible for 16 other people, I don't think you can have that risk. At the size of, let's say, 2 co-workers or 3 co-workers, it doesn't really matter. But at a larger size, any tiny mistakes can sort of like scale up to a much larger one, which could actually mean that you're making a loss and you have to maybe like dismiss somebody or whatever. So controlling system in place is super important.
Just to understand, so with controlling, you also, I guess, you are tracking the hours that you book for the clients, and then you compare it, how much do you charge your client. And when you see, for example, oh, for this client, we worked 50 hours this month, but the client only pays for an amount of 20 hours.
Yeah.
Then you need to do something. So one thing is you discuss with them like, hey, we can't do so much anymore. We need to do less. we can keep the price, but then we can't do A, B, C. Or you can say, hey, we need to I guess you have, because you said recurring revenue, so do you have an hourly rate or do you have like a fixed price without hours?
So the way you can imagine that, we have a metric called revenue per hours. So all of the hours we spent on a certain client should be above a certain hourly rate. And the way it works, we simply divide the amount of time we allocated on that particular project in a month. And obviously, the other part of that calculation is the retainer fee we charge. Let's say we charge €1,000. We spent on that
A
50
retainer.
hours,
Okay.
and then only 20 euro per an hour got gained out of that partnership, which is far below
Understood.
the expectations we do have.
So
Because,
yeah, so you charge retainer, which means like you charge 1,000 euros.
yeah,
You don't actually tell the client, hey, we work 20 hours for you. For the client, it's just 1,000 euros for
yeah,
doing, for example, Google Ads.
yeah,
And then internally, you track your time in order to see how much time did you spend. And then there comes this hourly rate
yes,
that you earn from this client. And if you go under this certain number that is for you important, then you have an issue. I
yeah.
mean, then you need to figure out how to sort it out with the client
Yeah, we
or
have
with your
two
employees.
options. Either we simply somehow renegotiate the contracted price, or internally we should be a bit more efficient and say out of that project, the maximum hours we can spend on is, let's say, 20 or 10. And if we are at 50, then obviously that's an issue and loss making on the long run.
Yeah. Then we have number 14. Do not overcomplicate things. For example, 127 line long performance evaluation.
Yeah. So I think the intention is always good when I start something new. And that was the case with the performance evaluation as well. I wanted to have a super simple but fair and transparent system. And I started to collect all of the points where we can evaluate somebody within the team, and ended up having a 127 line long performance evaluation that no one actually used. That was a good guidance.
Wow.
I worked a lot on that. It's super fair. They're like pointing system. If you fill it out always, then an actual number will come afterwards and ended up in, let's say, 0.9 out of 10. Super fair, super transparent, but super tedious, long one. And oftentimes people get overwhelmed with all of the information. So I would highly recommend to all the people who have the inclination of overcomplicating things. That's my personal idea, unfortunately, to involve someone else who's an expert and did that or ran that show before and know how to do, let's say, a performance evaluation system. I never done that before. My intention was good, but since I never had any sort of like system in place, I overcomplicated something which no one used. I spent many hours on that one, and obviously that's almost getting into the trash. I'm not telling you that it couldn't be better, and obviously we narrowed it down to certain points, but the first version was unnecessarily long and tedious.
Yeah, I mean, it's a journey, but I understand. I also started with this and keep it simple, and also for the employees, like engaging, because I mean, there should be a balance,
Yeah.
to find a way how to evaluate the performance. Number 15, have seniors on board as soon as possible.
Yeah, obviously money can be a constraint. So if you don't have money to pay for somebody who's more senior, that's an issue, and you should start from scratch. That was the case with Markastic.
Yeah.
But if I can go back in time, I would start instantly with seniors who can complement your skills, who have experience with managing other people, building up teams, because it speeds up processes a lot, because you don't have to control many things, because maybe they are far better than you at your expert field. Maybe they are better in Google Ads, maybe better in Facebook Ads, or maybe better in finance. And you don't have to solve all the things from scratch, but you have someone you can rely on. But obviously it takes a bit more money and investment, and obviously that's a higher risk for companies just starting up. But as a recommendation, if you can finance that, start with seniors and not with interns or juniors.
Yeah, makes sense, and have a good recruitment process in place in order to get real seniors, not somebody that pretends to have the experience, and then when they work for you, you figure out, oh, they are not so senior as I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, was for me the case. Number 16, work on and not in the business. Yeah, we discussed this before, but you can quickly elaborate on this.
I think it speaks to itself. So it oftentimes, especially if your personality type is a technician, it often happens that you get involved and remain involved in the daily operations, delivery, product development a lot, which actually limits your time and energy on, or like related to focus on the business development. So if you want to be an entrepreneur, building and growing your company, you cannot work in the business, but you should have like a helicopter perspective on your business and what should be evolved first and next, and what are the priorities for the next 1 to 3 years, and not what is the exact issue with the client tomorrow. So if you get stuck within the business, it means you have no free time, energy on the business itself to work and push it forward.
Yes, I fully agree. I mean, I'm doing this right now, and I mean, for somebody who's still in the business, try to find a way to get out of the business, or at least work only with your most important clients, if possible. If you say you can't get fully out, so that you have some time and also to work on the business. And takeaway number 17, do not be a control freak and too perfectionist.
Yeah, I think it also relates to the personality type of being a technician. I wanted to make sure that everything is 100% or like 120% cool, well-structured, professional, and above all the expectations of the client. But it cannot be the case, because it will end up in a scenario when you are controlling everything, you are working extra hours, and it's not only demotivational for you, but also for the other team members, because they always see that someone is circulating around them, checking all their minor steps, instead of like giving some place and space for failures and also some mistakes and also some course corrections. It's always a good feeling to get a bit more responsibility, and they are super happy to take it if you let that happen. But oftentimes, as a boss and you have all the controlling elements, it's not easy to do so. It's against your personality. You want to make sure that everything is perfectly mastered.
Yeah, but I mean, micromanaging, which is like kind of like control freak.
Yeah,
Employees don't
yes.
like to be micromanaged. So this is most important, because I've seen this so often, and sometimes I also fall in the trap by myself, and have to remind myself, hey, don't control them. They are adults. they should know their job, and if they don't do their job, you can speak with them, but don't try to micromanage them.
Agreed.
Rule number 18, listen to your gut feeling. People don't change that much.
Yeah, so I think it happened 3 times along the course of the 5 years when we hired somebody, maybe 4 times. We hired somebody, and I had the internal gut feeling that it's not going to work out well. It could be the case that the professional part or the financials are okay, but I had the feeling that personally, that person won't fit into the team culture and won't get along well with me. And at the end of the day, you have the choice with whom you want to work with. So if you have your company, I think at least enjoy the moment of selecting those people with whom you want to spend time, and also you want to work on something. So if the gut feeling says, hey, do not hire that person, do not be compromised with additional values such as, hey, that's such a professional person with such a cool background. If your gut feeling says it's not going to work out well, I can promise it's going to be the case after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
At least that's my personal experience.
For me as well. I mean, sometimes you even after you hire a person and you're like, oh, I think that doesn't work out. And unfortunately, most of the time it's true.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how it is. So if you already in the recruiting process have a strange feeling, better look for other alternatives instead of going with your first option that you have. It's better to find a person that you think is right fit for the job instead of the other thing. But it also happened for me that I hired somebody. I was really totally enthusiastic, and then I realized later when the person quit, oh, I should have checked more the resume and should have seen that this person changed every half a year the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and yeah, these are also things to keep in mind, of course. um Last takeaway, 19. At the end of the day, it's all about people.
Yeah. So unless you automated everything and you work with robots,
Mhm.
typically you have colleagues and customers, and they are people like human beings. So we also have that slogan, and also that tied into our company t-shirts, that at the end of the day it's all about
Yeah.
people. So no matter what, if you imagine something or you have a big vision, if you do not have like fellows with whom you can actually succeed with that, or proceed with that, it's not going to work out. If the customer loves you, even though the results are bad, you're good to go, because that's people business. So at the end of the day, it's all about people, and it also relates to you as an entrepreneur. If you are completely burned out, no matter how motivated you used to be 2 years ago, you burned out and you don't want to work anymore. So
Yeah. Yeah.
always keep in mind that the show is run not by AI or by robots, but people with feelings, emotions, and also like personal issues you must always somehow cope with. That's it.
Nothing more to add from my point of view. I mean, that was a nice ending in order to
Oh,
summarize
cool.
your your takeaways. First of all, thank you for sharing all these main takeaways. I think I find them really interesting, also for our listeners and for our viewers. Do you want to add something else on it?
I can imagine if I have a bit more time, maybe I can find 2 more points or 3 more points, but I think already this summarized my last couple of years quite extensively. So I think if it's useful for your listeners, that's already a good takeaway for them.
Yeah, I guess, or I think for sure they might get some insights of that, and also will check the takeaways and use them in their
Sure.
company or in their entrepreneurship journey. Um, so for all of our listeners and watchers, if you have any more question to Akash regarding the takeaways, or you want to add something to the takeaways from your own experience, just comment. Comment in our stream in the comment section, or leave a comment for the next episode. It was a pleasure, Akash, to have you here in our show.
Likewise.
Um, and thank you for preparing this takeaways. That was really insightful for me as well. And thank you for the show. And have a great day.
That was my pleasure. Thanks a lot for inviting me, and have a good
Thank
day
you.
ahead too.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.